Hello, my name is Dino Veland, and today I'll be taking you on a tour of the major features of Node.js tools for Visual Studio. This is an early alpha release that still has some rough edges here and there, but we think it's pretty functional and we'd love to hear your feedback on the product and the features. The first step to getting started is that I need to go ahead and create a new project. So I can select File, New, Project, and here you can see underneath the JavaScript tab that I have a number of different Node.js project types that I can select from. I can choose to create a new project from existing code. I can create a blank console application. I can create a blank web application or a blank Express application. I've also got two variations on the previous application types that are set up to be deployed to Windows Azure. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and create a new application from existing code. So I'll just double click on this project type. Up will pop a wizard, and I can just go ahead and give it a location where I have an existing application. If I have some various files that I want to bring into the project as well, I can specify filters here. I can click on Next, and you can see that my app has an app.js, and so that's automatically selected. If I had more top-level files, I could choose which one was going to be used for my startup file, and I can choose to include or exclude the node modules folder. Typically, you're not going to want to include this because it's not really part of the code that you're developing, but if you really want it included, you can choose to do so. Click on Next, and we'll go ahead and give the project name, and I'll click Finish. Here you can see that it opens in Project Explorer, and I have a basic Express app that I previously created. You can see here in Solution Explorer we have an npm node, and I can expand that. You can see I have a few dependencies that haven't been installed yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and open a command prompt and run npm install and bring in my dependencies. This will go off, download the packages. You can see in Solution Explorer, my node modules folder gets created. It's this grayed out form because it's not part of my project. And you can see as the packages get installed, we refresh the state in our npm node, and we can see these packages are installed and what versions they're currently installed at. Of course, I'm not just limited to using the command line to install packages. I can do this from within inside Visual Studio as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close the command line, and I'll right-click on npm and choose Manage npm modules. Over here you can see the modules that I already have installed, and I can come over and search the npm repository, choose a testing framework, and go ahead and install that locally. You'll see again, we're going to go off, download the package and install it. And you can see the UI refreshing in the background as we get the dependencies and all of the components that are necessary. We get the normal output here in the window so that I can see what exactly happened. I can go ahead and close that and close the management UI. And I can explore the packages that got installed. Hopefully that covers some of the basics of what you're already used to doing in your normal workflow. This brought in an existing application, and we worked with npm, which is something that you're probably doing quite a bit. But let's go ahead and look at creating a brand new application now. So I'm going to go ahead and go to File, New Project, and let's just go ahead and start with a blank Node.js web application. So here I am in my simple Hello World application that I've just created. One of the first things you might be curious about is what does the editing experience look like? So I can come here and I can type http dot, and you can see I get IntelliSense against all of the built-in members. So I can call create client and I get completions against that. I can require different modules, and you can see when I hit open paren, we'll go ahead and give you a list of the built-in node modules. I don't have any modules installed in my project yet that are my own, so all I'm seeing right now is just the built-in node modules. So I can go ahead and complete on FS, and I can dot into that, and you can see I have all the file system APIs, so I could append to a file or do whatever I want. Next, let's go ahead and create a new module inside of my project. So I can right-click here, choose Add, New Item, and I'll choose a JavaScript file, and we'll just call that mymod.js and choose to add that. And over here I can go ahead and do exports.foo equals a function here. We'll give it some parameters and we'll return a value. And over in server.js index.js. Now I can come over, require this, and you can see I get my mod in my list of completions. Go ahead, close that. You'll see we have the foo function there. I can go ahead and call it and dot through that, and we'll give you IntelliSense all the way through, understanding that we're now getting an integer back and completing upon that. This IntelliSense experience builds on top of the built-in JavaScript language service that ships with Visual Studio. It gives you really great results. It can understand your code to a really deep degree. It can understand things like string comparisons and evals, so it can give you a really fantastic result on your IntelliSense. On the other hand, there are some known issues with the IntelliSense, so we'd really love to hear the feedback of how this feature is working or not working for you. Of course, I don't want IntelliSense just against my own modules. I also want IntelliSense against modules that I install. So for example, I can come up here and once again install Express. Go ahead and close down the management UI, and we can see Express is installed with all of its dependencies. And now if I do require Express, we see that it shows up in the completions for the require. And afterwards, you can see that I get all of the typical completions for my Express application as well. Of course, installing Express into a normal application isn't really an Express application. So let's actually go ahead and start with a blank Express application from the project wizard. You can see here that I get this prompt immediately to go ahead and install my dependencies. And that's because package.json specifies that it depends upon Express. So I'll go ahead and click yes. You can see we open a typical command prompt here. In future versions, this will be integrated with our npm integration, but we weren't quite able to get that in time for alpha. So I'll go ahead and close that, and you can see I now have an Express application in all of its glory. So it has the typical things that you'd expect. We have routes, user, etc., all set up inside of my project, and I can go ahead and quickly get started coding. But the first thing I want to do today is go ahead and run this application. So I'm going to first go ahead and hit F5, which is going to launch in the debugger. You can see Node starts running, and we go ahead and open the web browser, and you can see my Express app is now running. So I can go ahead, minimize the web browser, and I can go over to my routes, open index, and you can see here we're going to render the main page. I can go ahead and set a breakpoint, switch back to my web browser, hit F5 to refresh, and you can see we break into the debugger. Here I can quickly inspect my objects that are coming in. So this is your basic Visual Studio debugging experience where you can see everything, expand down, and see exactly what's going on in your application. You can also see that we have a call stack window which shows us how we arrived here, and so I can navigate up that and look through the Express code. I can go ahead and switch to locals and see all of the locals along the way, and those will change of course as I switch from frame to frame. I can set up watch variables if I want. So if I came here, I could do res and evaluate that, expand that, or I could do res.domain to start drilling into various things. So it's your basic Visual Studio debugging experience, which you might already be used to. From here, I can go ahead, switch back to my function, and you can see I can go ahead and step into, out, and over. So I'm just going to go ahead and step out and continue stepping out. I can now step over, and so on. Another powerful feature that we have is the integrated profiling. So here you can see I have a simple site which is going to go ahead and calculate a Fibonacci number based upon the input URL. So let's go ahead and go to the Analyze menu and choose Launch Node.js Profiling. Here you can see I can either choose to run against my existing open project, or I can choose to run against a standalone script. I'm going to run against the existing project. I'll click Start, and we go ahead and launch. And you can see we bring up this page, we have Node running in the background, and the Fibonacci of 1, not surprising, is actually 1. I can go ahead and insert some different values here, and we can see the value starts growing. As I insert bigger numbers, it's going to take a little bit longer for each request to be processed. And I could go ahead and insert a fairly large number like 40, and you can see it'll go ahead and churn here for a little bit. and we'll have to wait for it to come back with a response. But there it goes. So let's go ahead and close down the browser, and we'll go ahead and see that the performance session automatically opens. Instantly you get this nice graph of where the time is being spent. So you can see I went ahead and opened the browser, and I was doing a few requests that don't really show up that significantly. But towards the end, as I started inserting those greater numbers, you can see that we're actually spending some CPU time. I can scroll down here, and I can go ahead and see where my hot code path is. And given that I had a recursive function, it's not too surprising to see Fibonacci all over that call stack. You can see that we have recompiled in parentheses here, and that just means that the V8 engine decided to rejit the function at some point in time in order to optimize it more. Sometimes you'll see both functions that are both recompiled and in their normal form, and so this is just giving you a little bit more insight of what's going on with your program while it's executing. I can also make a little more space here. We can see the functions that are doing the most individual work. I can go ahead and click on a function, and we'll see both the source code view as well as the calling functions and the called functions. The view that I really find useful is this caller-callee view. So it lets you quickly see the stacked view where the current function is in the middle, the functions that were called by it, the functions that were calling it, and you can go ahead and sort by these different views to see whether it's the function that's spending the actual time or whether it's the function and everything it's calling. Those would be inclusive versus exclusive. And I find that to be extremely useful when getting at the bottom of a performance problem. Another useful feature that we have is the interactive window. If you ever run node.exe directly from the command prompt, this will be a remarkably similar experience, but it's a little more powerful. So I can start off here, console.log, and hi, and obviously I get that output, and the result of calling console.log is undefined. But I can also do something more sophisticated, like define a function, and it can do console.log hi. And I'll go ahead and commit that function, and now I can call it. But kind of one of the really cool things here is if I go back through history, you'll see that I actually get multi-line history with my inputs. So I can go in, modify the function, commit it, call it again, and I can quickly update and iterate my code in a very interactive way. If I'm using Node to build a website, at the end of the day, I want people to be able to access that website. And we have several different ways that you can publish your website. So to show you how easy this is, first I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. And this time I'm going to go ahead and create a blank Windows Azure Node.js application. I'll go ahead and click OK. And you can see we get a few additional files that we didn't have before. And these are for deploying to Windows Azure and setting up and configuring the site to run on IIS. I can go ahead and first let's go ahead and update this. And I'll right click here and choose Publish. I'm going to go ahead and import my publish setting, click OK, and hit Publish. This will go ahead, package up the app, deploy it to Windows Azure websites, and you'll go ahead and see that we open it in the web browser, and it's as easy as that. But as a Node developer, that might not be the workflow that you're actually used to. So let's look at another way that I can publish a website. Here I'm going to go ahead and create a blank Node.js web application, and there's going to be nothing special about it. I'm going to make sure that the create directory for solution option is unchecked because that'll help with my deployment, and I'm going to go ahead and add the project to source control when it's created. I have two options here on how I want to add it to source control. I can either choose Team Foundation, which you may or may not be familiar with, or I can use Git, which you've probably heard of and is now built into Visual Studio 2013. I'll go ahead and click OK to choose Git. So next I'm going to go ahead and commit my changes into my local Git repo. I'll choose Commit, give it a commit message, and you can see it's going to add my project file, my package.json, my README, and my server. So I'll go ahead and commit those changes, and they're now committed. Next I want to go ahead and push those commits to my server. So I click on Unsync Commits, and you can see I can publish to a remote repo here. I'll switch over to my web browser, and I have my remote repo URL, so I'll copy that and paste it in here and click Publish. It's going to go ahead and ask me for my username and password. And you can now see that I've actually committed and published my changes. So now I can go ahead and switch back to my web browser, and you can see I have an active deployment. I can go ahead and go to my dashboard, scroll down, and there's my site URL. I'll go ahead and click on it, and you can see we're running. If I need to make some updates to my site, I can go ahead and switch back to Visual Studio, switch to Solution Explorer, and commit that change. Go ahead to my unsync commits and push that up to the server again. Switch to my web browser and refresh, and you can see I've updated my website. So that was a quick tour through the major features of Node.js tools for Visual Studio. I hope you found it informative, and we're looking forward to your feedback. Thanks.